Hey everybody, my name is Paul, I'm the gamer Scot, and welcome to my first look at Orbital Bullet, a procedurally generated dungeon crawler, or rogue-lite if you prefer. Shoot 'em up with a unique cylindrical mechanic, and we'll get to that later. Before we start, I just want to remind you that I stream indie games like this every week right here on YouTube. So if you want to join me and the rest of the clan, hit that subscribe button like it's the emergency stop on a runaway carousel. So, what can I say about the roguelike or RDC, check the video in the corner, subgenre that hasn't already been said? The usual format of randomly generated levels that follow a set of rules applies here, with unlocks that also help you on future runs. The concept of Orbital Bullet is pretty cool. It combines multiple genres that I already like: 2D platforming and shoot 'em up. So if you've played Contra or Probotector for my 90s Euro friends, then you kinda know what to expect, just with that procedural generation on top. Oh, and limited ammunition, so you can't just hold the fire button down. What makes it unique is the design of the levels. Instead of the standard left to right path of most games, Orbital Bullet puts you on a cylindrical structure that you run around the outside of. It's kinda weird and awesome at the same time. Your shots will treat the cylinder like it's a 2D plane, so they'll always follow it around. It's a bit like some of the small planets in Mario Galaxy. It's actually hard to explain, so I'm really hoping the visuals do a better job of it than I can. Resogun did a similar thing a few years ago, but there aren't many games that have used the mechanic. Each floor has 2 rings you can walk on, with enemies and items across both. You can only jump between them at certain predefined points, and that adds another layer of complexity. Things can get pretty intense when enemies start firing shots at you between rings and you can't go over to kill them. And, as you'd expect, you can only move up to the next floor once everything's dead. There are also semi-hidden sections with unlocks to pick up. I say semi-hidden because most of the time you can see them, but with the enemies and bullets flying around, they're really easy to miss. And once you go up a floor, there's not always a way to get back down to them. Sometimes they're on platforms, sometimes hidden behind destructible blocks, but they can be anything from currency to an ability unlock, so it's always worth keeping an eye open for them. As you kill enemies, you gain experience points and will level up. The levels don't give you extra hit points or heal you, but they do earn you ability points. Ability points can be assigned at upgrade stations dotted around the worlds. The abilities available to you are split into pre-made groups called skill patterns. The first group's assigned to you automatically, but future groups give you a choice, so you can kind of tailor your build to the abilities and weapons you've found and unlocked. Some of them will be relevant to you, but a lot of them won't, and sometimes you need to choose an ability that you don't really want just to unlock a path to one that you do. That's my minor complaint about this process, actually. There's no way to recover spent points and respec your build, which kinda discourages experimentation. If you find an energy weapon later in the game but you've focused your current build on bullet damage, you can't start over to take advantage of it. The bonus you get from sticking with one weapon type often outweighs the new weapon stats. And because the enemies get so much harder the further you go, it's a real crutch to just lose all those upgrade points you've already spent. I guess there's a tough balance there for the developers, because being able to just stop and rebuild every time you get a new weapon would really slow things down. But I'd like to see some kind of option to do that. And while we're on the subject, let's talk about the weapons. There's a decent selection: assault rifles, sniper rifles, rocket launchers, lasers, grenade launchers, it's all there. Each archetype uses a specific type of ammo, so you need to keep an eye on how much you've got left. Running out of ammo isn't the end of the world, because you can damage enemies by jumping on their heads, Mario style, but that's pretty impractical and it takes ages to kill anything. Just like every game, and I am getting really predictable with this, I prefer the assault rifle types, but I'm pretty fond of the energy weapons as well. I'd like to see some new weapon types added though, just to keep that variation high. Give us something a bit weird and off the wall, Smokestab. We're living in the future. One thing that makes Orbital Bullet stand out to me is that you've got multiple paths to take through the game. At certain points, like upgrade stations or merchants, you can choose to move to an alternative cylinder instead of moving up to the next floor. It's risk versus reward thing, where you might take damage and lose hit points that might be crucial for the next area, but at the same time, you might get a new weapon, more currency, or at the very least, more XP for killing another bunch of enemies. Assuming you beat the floor, you always have a way to get back to that original path and continue on your way. So far, I haven't seen any secret alternative paths that lead to whole new areas, but that'd definitely be cool. It could be in there, I just haven't seen it. As well as all of this, there's also what's called dimensional rifts. These are small secret areas where you have a limited time to kill all the enemies and unlock a chest with another item in it. Sometimes you also need to sacrifice some hit points to even go in. But at the end of the rift, you get a star rating and a reward weapon based on the time it took you to clear and how much damage you take, I think. Again, they really nailed the concept of risk-reward in Orbital Bullet. After every couple of floors you'll find a merchant who will sell you stuff for one of the in-game currencies, and I will come back to those currencies in a minute. Some of the items they sell are really useful, like a heal, a perk or a weapon, but like any procedurally generated dungeon crawler, sometimes that merchant has nothing good, or something good that you can't quite afford. The good news is you can usually circle back for a second look before you leave the level. And those currencies, let's talk about them. First of all, in case you're worried, there's nothing behind a paywall here. Every currency is earned and spent in-game, so no microtransactions at all. Gold coins are the basic currency for items from the merchant in your current run. You lose them when you die, although like dead cells, you can earn an ability to retain some of them between runs. Metal bits drop from crates and are used to unlock new weapons, so they have a chance of appearing on future runs. And blue triangles, called nanobytes apparently, are for your metagame progress with permanent unlocks for new abilities. These abilities and unlocks mean that even on a failed run you still feel like you're making some kind of progress. And if you have a lower skill ceiling, you can bump up your health and damage to make future runs easier and eventually brute force your way through, which I kinda like, actually. Not that my skills need the help though, obviously. Like any game with multiple currencies though, it can be a challenge to keep on top of which one is for which set of unlocks, but it ultimately won't really affect the way you play too much. The levels themselves are set out as individual planets, and there seems to be a decent range of environments. From rocky cyberpunk lasers to swampy marshes and Aztec-style ruins, the cylindrical nature of the game limits the numbers of layouts you can realistically expect, but the developers have done a good job of making each environment feel that bit different, with a good variety of enemies to suit. So far, I've only encountered 2 bosses, but they felt very different from each other, and they telegraph their attacks nicely. Too many RDC games rely on multiple runs and remembering how each boss works, and that really annoys me. Since Orbital Bullet runs can take well over an hour, it's necessary to give players all the information they need for that single run. So nice job guys! Right now, Orbital Bullet has very few accessibility options, but since it's in early access, we have to give it some credit. There's very little in the way of dialogue, but it's all text anyway, so hearing impairment shouldn't be a problem. The controls are all fully rebindable for anyone who uses a custom controller, so that'll help anyone with a physical disability. Right now there's nothing in the way of cognitive or visual impairment options, but that could obviously change later in development. So that is Smokestab's Orbital Bullet. I really like it, and I probably spent more time playing it for fun than getting footage for this video, which would also explain why this one's been sitting on my to-do list for a couple of months. But we finally got there. If you enjoyed the video, then please drop me a like, hit the dislike button if you didn't, and if you haven't already, please think about subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss new videos as they roll out. The algorithm gods demand to be fed. Once again, I stream games like this every week, and I have new first look videos as often as I can. I'm the gamer Scot, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.